The year 2022 leaves behind a mixed record in the field of law. While there were a number of significant decisions taken by courts in India, we also saw a number of human rights violations. Right from this to this. This year we also witnessed a head-on confrontation between the judiciary and the union government, where the law minister and the Chief Justice of India rarely found themselves on the same page. In this video, we shall do a quick recap of the year gone by in the legal sphere and highlight some of the top decisions taken by the Indian courts in 2022. Let's start with January 2022. The year began with a disturbing event from Haridwar. A Dharm Sansad saw an assortment of leaders from the Hindutva ecosystem taking the stage to set a new benchmark for hate speech in the country. Although the event took place in December 2021, the courts heard the case in 2022. The Supreme Court gave the Uttarakhand state government 10 days to reply. The top court was hearing a PIL seeking a probe into the hate speech targeting the Muslim community. This happened on 11 January. This swiftness of response didn't last long, as the matter dragged on for months before the Supreme Court finally let the Uttarakhand and Delhi police go. Yati Narasimhanand, the main speaker at Dharm Sansad, was arrested. Yati is the priest of Dasna Devi temple in Uttar Pradesh and the head of prominent Hindu sect called the Juna Akhada. He was arrested on 15 January by Haridwar police and was later released on 16 February. Moving on to February now. The Supreme Court on 5th February noted that the official statistics on COVID-19 deaths released by the states were, and I quote, not true, and directed state governments to pay compensation to relatives of deceased people who have applied without rejecting claims on technical grounds.
It says 3 variants of the virus are to blame for the surge of cases.
But what the official data is telling you is not.
This decision came during a time when the country was witnessing a high-pitched election campaign in Uttar Pradesh and COVID mismanagement was a major issue, especially during the second wave. Now moving on to March, everyone would remember these visuals. This video was viewed by millions of people. This video is from Lakhimpur, where 4 farmers were killed by a speeding vehicle. The Allahabad High Court granted bail to the main accused in the case, Ashish Mishra, son of Ajay Mishra Teni, who is Union Minister of State for Home Affairs. While listening to an application challenging his bail, the Supreme Court said that witness in the Lakhimpur Kheri violence case must be protected. What is this? There is a specific allegation that a witness was attacked on March 12. You have to file a detailed affidavit, the court said to the Uttar Pradesh Council. Despite the court coming down heavily on the government's council in March 2022, the courts are yet to conclude the trial. Now, April 2022's biggest decision by the Supreme Court was to uphold the amendments to the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, FCRA, which introduced restrictions on the inflow of foreign funds into India. By doing this, the Supreme Court reduced the limit of usage of foreign contribution for administrative expenses from 50% to 20%. The court said that foreign aid may tend to influence or impose political ideology and said, if need be, must be, and I quote, completely eschewed. This was opposed by NGOs and charity organizations. Writing in The Wire, Subhajit Chattopadhyay argued that, and I quote, restraining non-profit organizations is equal to restraining democracy itself. The government has used the FCRA as an instrument for harassment of political rivals or activist organizations such as Amnesty International. Starting from environmental activism to religious activities, a wide range of organizations have come under the scanner of government authorities in recent years. Come May 2022, India witnessed the brazen use of Bulldozer as a tool of political retribution. In April 2022, people living on the social as well as the geographical margins of Delhi faced the brunt of it during a demolition drive carried out by the MCD. Many people, most of them women, lost their livelihood during the demolition drive. The MCD termed the homes and shops illegal, but many observers saw the demolitions as the state's response to a communal clash that had broken out during a Shobha Yatra procession which was taken out by Hindutva groups to celebrate Hanuman Jayanti. A section of big media created a spectacle out of the misery of poor people. A Delhi court in May 2022 observed prima facie that the Delhi police had, and I quote, utterly failed in stopping the Hanuman Jayanti procession at Jahangirpuri on April 16, for which no permission had been granted. Their complicity, if any, also needs to be investigated, the judge further added. The court was unsparing of police's conduct, asking why local police officers were accompanying an illegal procession instead of stopping it. Moving on, The biggest decision of June 2022 was the dismissal of Zakia Jafri's plea challenging the SIT's report on the Gujarat riots that had declared there was insufficient evidence to prosecute the then Gujarat CM and now PM Narendra Modi and 64 others for the 2002 anti-Muslim killings in the state. Congress leader and former MP Ehsan Jafri was among scores of people killed in Gulbarg Society in Ahmedabad on February 28, 2002, a day after a coach of the Sabarmati Express was burnt at Godhra, killing 59 people and triggering riots in Gujarat. If the Supreme Court's dismissal was meant to bring a judicial end to the Gujarat riot story, a fresh chapter was promptly added by the arrest of celebrated activist Teesta Setalvad, who was Zakia Jafri's co-petitioner in the case. Prompted by unusual language in the apex court's judgment, the Gujarat police accused Setalvad of hatching a conspiracy to send innocent persons to jail. It took 2 months for her to secure interim bail. After Teesta's arrest, there was Mohammad Zubair. Zubair is the co-founder of the fact-check news website Alt News. He was charged with insulting religious feelings for a 4-year-old tweet on an old Hindi movie. The complaint against him came from an anonymous Twitter account. What was Zubair's March 2018 tweet? He had posted a photograph of a hotel whose signboard had been changed from honeymoon to Hanuman. The photo was actually a screenshot from a 1983 film Kisi Se Na Kehna by Rishikesh Mukherjee. Now, July 2022 was when Zubair was released by the Supreme Court. He was granted interim bail in a sequence of FIRs lodged by the UP police. Notably, the apex court also turned down the Uttar Pradesh Additional Advocate General's plea to stop Zubair from tweeting. And I quote, "We cannot stop him from tweeting. We cannot anticipatorily interdict him from exercising his right of free speech," the court had said. After this, July 2022 also saw the Supreme Court upholding the government's power of arrest, raids, seizure under the PMLA, which is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Under this act, the government and the Enforcement Director, ED, have virtually unbridled powers of summons, arrest and raids and makes bail nearly impossible while shifting the burden of proof of innocence onto the accused rather than the prosecution. In an editorial, the Hindu newspaper noted that the procedure under the PMLA does not appear to observe a basic tenet of natural justice, namely presumption of innocence until proven guilty. The contentious provision in this regard are sections 22, 23 and 45, which compromise right to a fair trial, put the onus onto the accused to prove innocence. There is no visible sign of the mandatory protections under the CRPC against police's power of search and arrest. Throughout the process, the accused could well be unaware of the allegations against him. Based on ECIR, the ED can summon accused persons and seek details of financial transactions. In the next month, the Supreme Court also accepted Congress MP Karti Chidambaram's plea to review the Supreme Court's decision. In the same month, that is, in August 2022, the Supreme Court also held a brief hearing on the Pegasus spyware matter. After The Wire and 16 other news organizations worldwide reported on the potential use of Pegasus spyware by the state, the court took cognizance of the matter and ordered a probe by an independent technical committee to see if the Indian agencies made use of Pegasus. The Supreme Court on August 25 noted that the technical committee had found malware in 5 of the 29 devices submitted to it. The bench also noted that the Union government, and I quote, did not cooperate with the expert committee. The Supreme Court said that the report by the committee was huge. It also said it was unwilling to release it in full, observing that some members who have submitted their phones to the committee have requested it to not release the report as their phones had private and confidential content. This claim was surprising as the committee's report is unlikely to have contained private data and could easily have been redacted even if it did. But the bottom line was that the committee noted that there was no response by the government on the matter, despite the court saying last year that national security concerns could not serve as an excuse for violating the fundamental rights of citizens. Technically, the Pegasus docket is still open and is likely to be raised again by the petitioners. Moving on, September 2022 was a month of hope. On September 29, the Supreme Court ruled that single and unmarried women with pregnancies between 20 and 24 weeks are entitled to access the safe and legal abortion care as married women. A bench led by Justice D.Y. Chandrachud said, and I quote, "The rights of reproductive autonomy, dignity and privacy give an unmarried woman the right of choice as to whether or not to bear a child on a similar footing as that of a married woman." Other than that, the Supreme Court also came down heavily on the television news media's hate for profit model. Mincing no words, the court dubbed the visual media as the chief medium of hate speech. The Supreme Court was hearing a batch of petitions included challenges to the infamous UPSC Jihad show aired by Sudarshan News TV, speeches made by the hard-right Hindutva leaders at the Haridwar Dharm Sansad that was shown at the beginning of this video, and social media messages that communalized the spread of COVID-19 in India, blaming the Tablighi Jamaat for it. Stating that the news media has a devastating effect, the court noted that hate speech is layered. Like killing someone, you can do it in multiple ways, slowly or otherwise. They keep us hooked based on certain convictions. October was the month when Gurmeet Ram Rahim was given a 40-day parole just before a by-poll election in the state of Haryana. He is serving a 20-year jail term for raping 2 women disciples at his ashram in Sirsa, where the Dera is headquartered. Ram Rahim was convicted by a special CBI court in Panchkula in August 2017. Other than that, a 2-judge bench of the Supreme Court delivered a split verdict on the batch of pleas challenging the Karnataka government order empowering the state to prevent students from wearing religious clothes during the controversy over wearing hijab that rocked the state earlier this year. In January 2022, 6 young women students of the government women's PU college in Udupi were not allowed to enter the classroom because they came dressed in hijabs. Further, they were barred from entering due to headscarves. As the students pressed their demand to be allowed to attend classes in hijab, the issue grew in magnitude. Muslim women students took to the streets in protest. Right-wing students in response were seen demonstrating in saffron shawls and chanting slogans of Jai Shri Ram, and the controversy soon spread to the other institutions in the state. The case has now been referred to the CJI. November 2022's biggest legal decision was to uphold the 103rd Constitutional Amendment, which granted 10% reservation to the economically weaker sections among the upper castes. The Supreme Court passed this verdict in a 3-2 decision where the CJI was against granting this reservation. Many observers noted that this was essentially the last nail in the coffin of caste-based reservations in India. An editorial in The Hindu stated, and I quote, "By introducing an income criteria and barring OBCs beside SC/ST communities from the EWS silo, there is a clear violation of equality in their eligibility to avail of a part of the open competition opportunities. The government should consider both opening up the EWS quota to all communities and keeping the income criteria much lower than the ceiling, which is currently at 8 lakh rupees. Lastly, the final month of the year saw the Supreme Court of India rejecting the plea by Bilkis Banu, seeking review of its May 2022 order, which said that Gujarat government was the appropriate government to decide the prayer for remission by one of the 11 convicts responsible for the gang rape of Banu and the murder of her family during the Gujarat riots of 2002. Bilkis had, through counsel Shobha Gupta, requested for an open court hearing of a review petition seeking alteration of the May 13 judgment to the effect that Maharashtra would be the appropriate state to decide on the remission pleas. A bench headed by Justice Rastogi had on May 13 ruled that since the incident happened in Gujarat, it would be the appropriate state to reconsider the remission pleas as per the 1992 remission rules. The convicts were released under the remission policy of the Gujarat government made in 1992. These convicts would not have been released if the Gujarat government would have gone by the remission policy currently in effect in the state, formulated in 2014. So, these were some of the biggest legal decisions of the year 2022. We might have missed some other top cases like the one involving Himanshu Kumar and his case regarding the extrajudicial killings of Adivasis, the Supreme Court's controversial decision to send Professor Sai Baba back to prison despite the Bombay High Court discharging him in the terror case, or on the release of Rajiv Gandhi's killers. Do let us know in comments about the cases you feel that could have been mentioned in the video. But we will close with what was arguably one of the most significant law-related observations made by President द्रौपदी मुर्मू.
कहते हैं आजकल तो और ज़्यादा जेल बहुत सारे इतने ओवर क्राउडेड हो गए और सारा बहुत सारे प्रिजन बनाना होगा. अरे हम ये आगे जा रहे हैं, हम विकास की ओर जा रहे हैं, फिर और ज़्यादा जेलें बनाने का ये क्या ज़रूरत है? कम करना चाहिए. मैं सब आपके ऊपर छोड़ रही हूँ. यहाँ लॉ मिनिस्टर है और आप सब जो जैसे मैं अपने बात को अधूरा रखी, बाकी जो नहीं बोल रही हूँ वो चीज़ को आप समझिए.